Dummies here. Super excited about this. I've got some videos to be posted here later this week. I've got some sneak preview stuff happening on Instagram. Just hitting it, trading it, throwing out all that stuff on Instagram. So make sure you're following at kenfuTV over there. Otherwise, there's gonna be a video coming together, hopefully here later this week, showing the arrival of this, kind of some initial thoughts, and then changes to this space altogether, the space that I'm training in right now. Otherwise, it's day 24 out of 100 on the Jiu-Jitsu Burpee Challenge. That has been super awesome. It's amazing what can happen when you just spend some time, little by little, every day. It'd be really easy to do more. I've been doing 50 a day. It'd be easy to do more than that, but just sticking to 50 and just doing it every single day has really shown just the power of consistency. So that's really cool. That's kind of the updates of what's been going on right now. So let's jump into today's video. All right, so today we're talking angles, or at least martial arts that use angles as an approach or a methodology of teaching what they teach. But first, if you're new here, I'm Ken, this is kenfuTV, and I release videos on the martial arts and philosophy and training and all that kind of stuff every Monday and throughout the week, depending on if I've got other things going. So if that's the kind of thing that you're into, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you know when new videos come out. In the meantime, let's get started. So, angle-based training. Angle-based training is not unique to the Filipino martial arts, though you definitely see it. I mean, it's almost the only way the Filipino martial arts is taught. I can't say I actually know of a particular system that doesn't teach using a system of angles, but I've always really liked that. Ever since I first kind of came to understand how that works and why they develop it that way, man, it sure makes a lot of rational, logical sense to me. The whole concept is based on, rather than having a huge catalog of attacks, specific things, okay, they do a lead hand punch, a rear hand punch, do a hook, uppercut, front kick, round kick, bear hug, wrist grab, blah, 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 all these different things. And then categorically, you're supposed to remember all of these different ways of dealing with those different things. And usually they're very different from each other. You know, that ends up in a huge amount of material that you've got to remember. And most of the time it's kind of loosely connected to each other. So instead of having a really clear logical progression, instead it's usually, okay, if there's this, then here's how you deal with that. If there's this, then here's how you deal with that. And you know what? I was originally trained that way, and there are parts of it that certainly have made sense. Over time, that has changed, even through my instructor and how he's taught me. We haven't always relied on that particular approach over time. There are certain things that are always going to fall out. So as I talk about the angular training, things like a bear hug or something like that don't necessarily fall into the angle categories that you have. But outside of that, I do think there's a really good logical methodology for it. In angular training, it's very common for there to be a numerical system as well. So each of the angles are numbered. Truly not unlike other things. Boxing is a really good example of, you don't give them the old 1-2 punch, right? That's keying off of certain numbers. You've got your jab, your cross, your hook, all of that is usually numbered 1, 2, 3, etc., as they go through that. So it's just a way of classifying and triggering memory. Especially makes it really easy to do combinations. Okay, I want you to go 1-3-1, 1-2-3-1, 1-4-1, you know, 1-4-2. Now I'm just rambling on combinations of numbers. That's silly. So you get the idea. The Filipino martial arts is what I'll base this video on. Again, that's not the only thing that uses this, but it's certainly prevalent. So for example, in the Filipino martial arts, very, very common, not always true, but very, very common is the idea of the five, the cinco terros, the 5 angles, which is usually a forehand diagonal, a backhand diagonal, forehand horizontal, backhand horizontal, and a thrust. Sometimes you'll see a forehand downward diagonal, a backhand rising diagonal, forehand rising diagonal, backhand downward diagonal, and then a thrust. Those two are probably the most common. The first one of the 2 diagonals, the 2 horizontals, and the thrust being the most common, the one that I see the most in everybody's numerator or numbering system. But you'll find a lot of different ones. In fact, most of the Filipino arts have a 12 count, and that's kind of their format, their template. But truly, at the end of the day, you only have so many angles that exist, right? You have your cross or your plus scenario, your downward, upward, horizontals. Then you have your diagonals or your X. Okay, your diagonal down, diagonal up, diagonal up. Then you have your thrusts. Well, the thrust can be on whatever line, but the truth is the plane is this way, and that's what's going on in that motion. That's it. Add in levels, height variations, high, middle, low, and now you've moved that exponentially, but it's still the same basic angles, just to different targets, and that's it. Now you look at the approach of handling those angles. You can either meet that force or follow that force. Again, that's the basic too, and makes up the majority of methodologies. So now when you look at that, that's really, really simple. The thing that makes it magical to me is the idea that that never changes. If I throw a big slap, angle 1. If I hit you with a stick, angle 1. Hit big with a stick, angle 1, right? All of these things, grab a knife and ice pick down, a lot of times angle 1 or something more vertical. All of these ways are still following that same angle. Backhand comes, backhand strike with a stick, backhand slash with a knife, backhand double hand stuff happening. All of those things are still falling into the same angular category. So the part that makes it really, really great, the part that makes me really like this methodology, is the fact that you learn to address the angle of approach. Not necessarily the tool in use. Is it a fist? Is it an open hand? Is it a stick, a knife, a long blade, a big stick? Is it a kick? Is it a whatever? Instead of addressing all those things categorically, it's just one thing. Is it entering on this angle? Then deal with it that way. You might have to adjust range depending on what that tool is, how close you are. Otherwise, address it the same. Such a more simple methodology, a much more simple approach that really, really just makes a lot of sense to me personally as a way of approaching this stuff. So you want to deal with all of your hand movements, you know, and you still have your punches are happening in those thrusting angles. You throw all these different things, you know, even things like your elbows are typically going to happen along those same planes, right? All of the same things are still just following angles. I have no choice but to follow angles. The angles exist, whether I address them or not. I find that to be a very interesting methodology. It's not the only methodology out there. I want to hear what you think. Do you like an angular methodology? If you're new to the angular methodology, do you like the idea of that approach? Or is there something that you think makes way more sense? Hit me in the comments and let's see what you guys think. What methods of teaching make more sense to you? At any rate, that's it for this week. kenfuTV. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, do all of that stuff. Do you, keep training, and I'll catch you in the next one.